Hey guys, it's Michael Kummer here, and for today's video I have a special guest, Dr. Alvin Dannenberg. He's a periodontist, he's a cancer survivor, and a functional medicine practitioner. He has been a dentist or a periodontist for 44 years and has learned a lot about how to keep your teeth clean. And it might surprise you that what you're doing today, brushing, flossing, rinsing, all of those things might not be the answer to keep your teeth healthy. So we're gonna talk a lot about what it really takes to keep your teeth healthy, why plaque isn't a problem, it's necessary, it's something good, and we're gonna talk about how the gut is directly related to the health of your teeth. So tune in with us, stick with us. It's a fascinating interview with a lot of information. I'll try to keep everything down in the description as well, so you can follow the links and all the recommendations that Dr. Al, as he likes to be called, mentioned throughout the interview. So let's jump right into the interview. Okay, alrighty. Well, thanks for making the time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This is fun.
Yeah, so I think the way we want to get started is maybe you're going to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got to where you are, and then I'd like to maybe tell my story real quick as far as dental health is concerned, all the stuff that I went through and some of the, I guess, misconceptions that I had to figure out along the way, and then we can dive right into what you think is the cause of bad dental health, how diet and the gut plays into that. Maybe talk about some of the misconceptions as far as how often you need to brush, what toothpaste you want to use, fluoride, good or bad, etc. And some of those things that I'm sure our listeners might not be familiar with. And then where they can find more information. What can people do to, if they have bad dental health, to fix that, starting with, I guess, the gut, but we'll talk about that later. So
basically I'm an old guy, almost 75 years old. So there's a long story here, but around 1972 or so, I graduated from dental school. That's a long time ago, before you were born, I'm sure. Yeah. And then 74, I got a certification in a specialty called periodontics, which is a dental specialty where we treat gum disease that related to the gum tissue, the jawbone, and a variety of other factors that support that health or breakdown. So I was practicing as a periodontist for 44 years in conventional ways, doing the conventional things the periodontists do, basically telling people how to brush and floss and scolding them if they came back with inflammation after 6 months, and then telling them what to do again. And 6 months later, they still had problems. And the funny thing is that you hear it, you see it, patients repeat what you say, and they say, well, I'm doing all these things and I still have problems. And it was confounding. It was difficult to understand why they had infection. Not everybody, but there was a segment that continued to have infection, continued to have inflammation, and they were doing all the mechanical things correct. What I didn't understand, and I didn't learn that until maybe 6 years before I retired from practice, I'll tell you about that in a moment, but I didn't understand how nutrition played a role, and the gut health was dominant in their overall oral health. Now, if they had bad dentistry, fillings that were broken and not properly made and didn't fit well, or partial dentures that were rocking the teeth, or filling materials that had chemicals that were irritating the mouth, that's another story. But if they didn't have these difficult problems in their mouth because of iatrogenic dentistry, bad dentistry, or broken teeth and whatever, the real cause was, as I learned, was actually from the gut and inflammation. We'll get into quite a bit of that. And then once you treat the gut and the mouth, two different nituses of infection, concurrently, the results are spectacular. So I was practicing conventional periodontics, doing surgeries, treating bone damage, doing bone grafts, implants, all kinds of things. And then maybe 6 years or so before I retired in 2018, I learned about more of this nutrition and gut health. And I learned about it I got a certification certified functional medicine practitioner. I got a certification as a primal health coach, and of course, many, many different CE courses. But unfortunately, this stuff is not taught in dental school. Even today, most dentists just don't understand that. Now, I've had some interesting situations in my own life. So in 2018, now I'm thinking I'm a pretty healthy guy. Just reminding you, 6 years before that, I've changed my entire life and started to incorporate all this great nutrition in my practice. I was really doing well, and I thought I was the senior poster boy for a healthy lifestyle. I was 71 years old at that time. Turns out in September of 2018, I was diagnosed with incurable bone marrow cancer, specifically multiple myeloma, with severe lytic lesions or holes throughout my skeleton. Now, I think that actually occurred. The manifestation occurred in September 2018, but the cancer developed while I was in dental school, and I was exposed to some severe environmental toxic elements, mercury fillings, and low dose radiation from dental x-ray machines continuously, not just because I had, dental x-rays, but in our dental clinic way back in the 70s, early 70s, we were exposed to radiation all the time. We didn't really understand that. And we certainly didn't understand the toxicity of free mercury, which we played with in our hands like kids play with Play-Doh. And unfortunately, even today, dental schools still teach and require students to know how to place mercury fillings called dental amalgams, which is amazing because it's so toxic. But I think that created the malignant plasma cell in my body to develop, and over 4 decades manifested to what it manifested. So I was diagnosed in 2018 with incurable bone marrow cancer, and I was given 3 to 6 months to live.
Oh, wow.
Now, that was kind of spectacular.
I can imagine.
Devastating. And because of this prognosis, I couldn't see myself getting involved with chemotherapy that would destroy my immune system and my quality of life. And my oncologist, who I still see today, worked with me, and I rejected chemotherapy, and I created what's now my 10 unconventional cancer protocols based on all this nutrition that I learned and quite a number of things along the way. And I have rebuilt my immune system in an amazing way, as best as I can, and I am surviving extremely well without chemotherapy. As a matter of fact, in May of 2020, my PET scan showed no active cancer cells. But in 2019, I had a severe fall and broke quite a number of bones on my right side at one time, my femur, my humerus, several ribs, and I was placed in hospice to die. That's in the late 2019. I eventually recovered. My wife kind of gave me some tough love and said, look, you're not a victim, you're a survivor, and did some things, got a physical therapist in. I went back to my unconventional cancer protocols, and I really rallied. And then May of 2020, my most recent PET scan showed no active cancer cells. But in June of 2021, I actually developed COVID. And because I had improved my immune system to the way I had done with my cancer protocols, I never was hospitalized. I never took medications. I was kind of sick and exhausted, but I'm doing and thriving extremely well. So all of this comes together, and here is where I am now. I am doing consultations all over the world to help people understand that lifestyle changes, diet changes, gut health, critical, not just for dental health, but all kinds of organic issues, chronic disease. The bottom line is to rebuild a robust immune system. And there are ways to do that. And I got to tell you, supplements, these supplement companies that sell these bottles of products and say, take this, and now you're going to have a healthy immune system. That's just not correct. You need to make a variety of changes that literally affect your immune system. So that's where I am, loving it. and we can go into some other details about the gut and oral health as you see fit.
All right. Well, that was a fascinating story. Thanks for sharing. Mine, in comparison, seems kind of lame to that, but but I want to, share it anyway, just in terms of, my own experience with dental health and some of the things that I've done. That kind of, mimic and reflect what you already said. Do what your dentist says, it will be fine. And I wasn't. And so for most of my, I grew up in Europe, in Austria, to be more specific. And my parents had no concept of nutrition. They just did what most parents do, whatever they're told from doctors and from mainstream media and stuff. Eat your veggies and do this and that, and you'll be fine. But funny enough, for most of my life, I didn't really have any dental issues. It was, I don't know, I must have been already 15 or 16 where I got my first cavity. And at that point, I still thought that, I wanted to become a pilot at the time. And I thought that if you have a cavity, you can't become a pilot. I don't know if that was ever true, but at least that's what I remembered. And so I was devastated that I couldn't become a pilot anymore. But then fast forward it was in 2007 that I moved to the United States. And up until that point, I think I had like a gap of dentist visits for a couple of years where I just didn't go because I thought everything is fine anyway. And so I came to the US, fully adopted the American way of life, including the diet, unfortunately. And about, I don't know, maybe a year in or so, I went to my first dentist appointment. And the dentist told me, well, you have 11 cavities. And that was from either 1 or 0, because that first cavity might have been, I think it was in my second set of teeth. So from 1 cavity to 11. And I'm like, I'm not buying it. You just want to make money. So I went to another dentist, they did their thing and said, well, you have 11 cavities. And I couldn't believe it. I was blown away by the fact that how could I possibly have 11 cavities? Because one thing that I've always been doing is brush my teeth. Even in my youth, when I, went out partying and drinking and stuff, it didn't matter how drunk I was, I would always brush my teeth before going to bed. So I couldn't explain that. And they're like, well, you have to floss. Are you flossing? And I was like, nope, never flossed in my life. Well, that's what it is. And I'm like, oh, someone should have told me, maybe people did, but I, didn't pay attention. So I started flossing religiously, and it got to a point where I would brush after every single bite I had, floss after every single meal. So like, at that point, maybe 4 times a day, I would floss and brush and everything. And it still wouldn't get better. I would still get cavities, not 11 anymore at a time, but still, 1 or 2 more. And I'm like, something is wrong. It doesn't make sense. And the explanation at the time was, well, maybe you have bad dental material and my dad said, well, I have that too. My dad had it, so it's genetic. And I'm like, all right, I guess there is nothing I can do. And then it was maybe at this point, maybe 6-7 years ago, I adopted a Paleolithic diet that led into a ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting. And I remember the dentist that I went to was an older gentleman who, very senior and has seen, I'm sure, a share of things. And I went in there, and that was a year after my last checkup. And he said he has never seen gum scores that well. I don't know what I'm doing, but keep doing it. And I said, well, the only thing that I've changed is my diet. I still brush as often, I still floss as often. I've changed my diet. In particular, I've stopped eating carbs and I'm fasting more. So I figured, well, if I don't give the bacteria in my teeth nothing to eat by the fasting and by cutting out carbs, that was maybe it. And he said, well, whatever you're doing, you're doing fine. I don't know about the nutrition. I mean, my wife wants to get me this vegan diet, but I don't know, so it was clear an indication, as you said, that dentists typically know nothing about nutrition unless they're personally interested in it stuff. But bottom line is, ever since then, I've had 0 issues with my teeth. And for the longest time, I thought it was probably because I wasn't eating carbs again, but I'm eating carbs now again and nothing has changed. So it's got to be something else. And I think that again goes back to your point that what was the likely cause was that my gut wasn't healthy at the time. And so the microbiome in my mouth wasn't healthy. I had inflammation, I had all stuff going on that I couldn't fix with brushing and flossing and rinsing and all the things probably that I shouldn't have been doing in the first place. But clearly it didn't help. So with that said, let's maybe dive into some of the recommendations that you would typically hear from a dentist, what you should do in terms of brushing, flossing, maybe rinsing. I don't know if that's something a dentist would recommend, but certainly something that you hear if you watch, commercials, that you should be, rinsing with stuff all the time. What are some of the things that are necessary that you should be doing? And if so, how often? And how does that compare to how humans have evolved over years? Because I remember a couple of months ago, I saw an episode of Survivor, and they are there for 39 days, I think, you know, on an island or what have you. And they have like a stick to brush their teeth. And I'm like, do they all come back with bad dental health because they cannot floss and brush and all? And then I thought about all the modern hunter-gatherer tribes that are still out there. They probably don't use electric toothbrushes either, and you know, and wax floss and all of those things. You know, they probably have a stick and I don't know, maybe some twine from, I don't know, from a tree. So what do we need to do on a mechanical side to keep our teeth healthy? And is that even important if your gut is healthy and if your microbiome in your mouth is healthy? Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How that all that goes together?
Great questions. You know, what we need to do, what I did, is get a really broad perspective, not what has happened over the last 10 years or 20 years or 1,000 years, but look at human evolution over 2.5 million years. Mm-hmm. There is a human skull, I think it's about 120,000 years that's been dated. I can't remember the exact, but this is a human skull, and you're seeing in this human skull teeth and jawbone. And if you look at that skull jaw, there is no bone damage in the bone around the root of the teeth. If you look at the teeth, there is no decay. If you look at the teeth, all 32 teeth, which is the number of teeth an adult person would have, are present. So that would mean that he would be at least 18 to 25 years old. And if you look at the surface of the teeth, it's very worn down. So he's been doing a lot of chewing on hard substances for quite a number of times. So I would say he was at least 25, maybe even 32 years old. So it's an older person with no dental decay and no bone damage. But if you look very closely at this skeleton, there is junk stuck between the teeth in the skull. And that junk is calcified dental plaque. That's the bacteria film around the teeth. No gum disease, no tooth decay, but tartar or calculus. Mm-hmm. How could that be if tartar and bacteria in the mouth cause tooth decay? I will tell you now, but I'll explain it in a bit. Dental plaque is healthy and it's necessary until it's unhealthy. Right. So how does it get unhealthy? Well, now your story relates to all of that. You changed your diet without knowing. Of course, you realized you were removing irritating foods that cause quite a number of areas of damage, not only in your mouth, but in your gut. You may have not known that, but it did. And we have about 38 trillion bacteria in our gut, many, many, many different species. And they serve many purposes. If you were to take a tablet of penicillin because you didn't want to have any infection in your gut and we want to kill all the bacteria, you'll die. Those 38 trillion microbes in your gut serve many, many purposes. And one of those purposes is that you have many species, meaning a very high diversity of your microbiome. It crowds out potentially pathogenic bacteria. Now, if you were to look at the bacteria in the gut and look at individual bacteria, a individual bacterium, it may be highly potentially pathogenic. If it was to overgrow, it could kill you. But it has a balanced state that keeps everything else in balance. And that's what you need. Balanced microbiome. So when you have many varieties of bacteria, you have a balanced microbiome, and a diet that you're talking about will support that. And when you have this balanced microbiome, it supports a healthy immune system. But if you don't have a balanced microbiome in your gut and bad bacteria overgrow, it irritates the gut lining, and the gut lining, which is only one cell layer thick, starts to break down. And when it breaks down, it's like a leaky pipe, and you have toxic material that should never leak into the blood system getting into the blood system, and your immune system tries to fight this and it's unsuccessful. So it's continuously 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, creating chronic systemic inflammation, pouring out this endotoxemia throughout your body. And it gets to every organ system, including the mouth. Now, here's what happens. When it gets to the mouth has its own microbiome, maybe 700 or different species of bacteria. And the dental plaque, this film that every dentist and hygienist tells you to scrub off or you're going to have gum disease or tooth decay. That dental plaque has maybe 200, 300, 400 different species, but it's protective. Let me give you an example of what this tooth is like. If you think about it, there is no hard structure, or you think about a hard structure in the body that pierces the skin and embeds itself into sterile bone. Where is that occurring other than the mouth and a tooth? So the tooth literally penetrates the gum tissue and it's anchored in the sterile jawbone. If there was nothing to protect that tooth and the entrance into the bone, the bacteria in the mouth would easily slide down this wet, dark surface, slippery surface, get into the jawbone. Your jaw would decay and our species would have died. Your jaw would be necrosed and you wouldn't have a jaw anymore. Of course, it doesn't happen. And the reason it doesn't happen are many. One of the reasons is that there are a variety of immune cells under the gum, in the bone, to kill off and gobble up bacteria that could get there. There are other structures that protect the invasion of bacteria. But there's a superficial biofilm around the root of the tooth where the tooth meets the gum, and it's called dental plaque. And it has 200 or 300 species, and they're in a state of balance. Now, if you isolated an individual bacterium, it may be highly pathogenic and would cause lots of disease if it overgrew. But just like the gut, if it's in a state of balance, everything balances out. Now, the dental plaque maintains 3 very important purposes. One is that this garden of bacteria produces hydrogen peroxide. And that hydrogen peroxide, naturally producing hydrogen peroxide of the bacteria, kill other potential pathogenic bacteria in the saliva and the rest of the mouth that want to get into the gum tooth space, because the peroxide literally kills these microbes. It also has chemical buffers to protect the acid level from getting too acid. Therefore, it literally avoids tooth decay because it maintains a pH of 5.5 or higher. And the other thing it does is it's acting like a gatekeeper. All of the minerals your body can use to remineralize and make a healthy root surface are in your saliva, not in a mouthwash or a mouth rinse or something. It's in your saliva 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Your saliva is pouring in your mouth, more so during the day, less so at night. But these minerals can literally penetrate the biofilm, the dental plaque, and the dental plaque allows these minerals to remineralize the root surface if there is some breakdown or early tooth decay. So there are very important 3 purposes to dental plaque. So the worst thing you could do, which is what every hygienist and dentist tells you, they'll even stain your teeth to show you where the red dental plaque is with a vegetable dye. And they'll show you how to scrub that so that all the dental plaque is gone. It's like going outside with no clothes. I mean, you're not protected anymore. And in addition to that, if you can't keep the plaque under control completely, they're going to give you antimicrobial mouthwashes to kill the plaque, or they're going to recommend an antimicrobial toothpaste, or they're going to recommend products that you can rinse that bind to all kinds of things to remove the ability for the plaque to form, like xylitol, for example, which is not a good product for dental plaque. It stops the dental plaque from forming. So all those things are not necessary. They're actually damaging. So the important thing is to maintain a healthy gut microbiome and a healthy mouth, and brush and floss and clean your tongue properly. We'll get into that, but not use things that will kill all these microbes. There are some potentially bad microbes that need to be killed if you have disease, maybe for a week to 10 days. But if you were to use oil pooling and other things on a daily basis, you'll destroy not just some bad bacteria, but your good bacteria. And you will actually encourage your mouth to be more unhealthy, and you'll decrease your immune system in your mouth.
All right, well, there was a lot of information here to unpack, but maybe let's start with the leaky gut. So there is a lining in your gut that protects stuff that you eat from getting directly into your bloodstream, right?
Correct.
Like proteins and some other stuff that the immune system would identify as an invader and attack.
Correct. So when you're eating foods, you have a variety of enzymes that are breaking down complex proteins and carbohydrates and fats, and they're breaking it down into their most basic molecular structure so that they're still nutritious. And those basic molecular structures are small enough to ooze through the mucus layer of the gut, through the epithelial barrier, which is only one cell layer thick, to get in your bloodstream so your body utilizes it. All that's natural. But if you have dysbiosis, meaning that your garden of bacteria is overgrowing with bad bacteria because of a variety of things, not just diet, it's chemicals, it's a poor, over-exercising, under-exercising, dirty electromagnetic fields, emotional stress, poor sleep habits. All of these things can affect the gut microbiome. Over-the-counter medicines, prescription drugs, and there's a host of things that can damage the gut other than the food that we're eating. Mm-hmm. But if it damages and the epithelial lining starts to get punctured with holes because the bacteria damages it and the immune system is trying to fight it, some of the nutrients that are not fully digested, as well as toxic elements that should never get out of the gut other than the other end, start to penetrate these holes. And when that happens, the immune system immediately is alerted and it tries to fight that. And sometimes when it tries to fight that and it creates antibodies to fight that, some of these elements that are leaking are not a problem if they were fully digested, but since they're not fully digested, the immune system doesn't recognize it. And those antibodies look at certain elements of the proteins, and they look at other proteins and other healthy organs that have maybe a similar structure, and it starts to affect those organs, and that's called an autoimmune disease, like Hashimoto's. Right. And there are quite a number of varieties of autoimmune disease, skin rashes and multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's and on and on and on, rheumatoid arthritis. It's all a matter of our immune system starting to fight and destroy our own cells because they look like some of the bad or undigested proteins that have been leaking out of the gut, and the antibodies are confused and they attack both.
So the immune system it's not that the immune system isn't doing enough, it's actually doing more than it should in those cases.
It's doing more than it should because it's confused, because the leaky gut isn't healed, never heals unless you take proper precautions and you have the proper treatment, and you're constantly having this chronic inflammation. It starts as an acute inflammation, like any, if you cut yourself, you're going to have swelling and tenderness, and your immune system is active with acute inflammation. That's important. That's how you heal. But if you constantly, let's say you had a splinter, in the beginning you'll have acute inflammation. But if you leave the splinter in your finger, then the immune system is trying to fight it, but it can't fight it because the splinter isn't physically removed. But as soon as you remove the splinter, then everything heals if you're a healthy person. So the whole point is acute inflammation is critical for healing, but when it becomes chronic and the irritant is never removed, the chronic inflammation is highly damaging to every organ system in the body.
All right, thank you. And then the second part that I think was the most interesting for me, the dental plaque that we've, everyone tells you to remove that stuff, brush, and get rid of it, is actually a good thing. And as with, I guess it's, akin to taking, antibiotics. There is a place for that. If you have, a bacterial infection that you cannot fight any other way, But by doing so, be aware that you're removing some of the good stuff as well, some of the good bacteria as well. And that could open the gate, if your lifestyle is not appropriate, for more of the bad bacteria to regrow and potentially regrow quicker than the good ones. And then you're in worse shape than you were before. And
correct. Even when I was practicing periodontics and, with real patients, obviously, there are times, of course, when there is very acute infection. You have to use traditional methods like systemic antibiotics that will kill a lot of the bad stuff and the good stuff. But you have to be aware as a clinician, it's only a short-term regimen, 7 to 10 days. And at the same time you're trying to kill this, you have to start a protocol that could take months now, not a short period of time, 3, 6 months, sometimes a year, to repopulate the healthy gut microbiome as well as the healthy oral microbiome, the mouth bacteria. So one is very important to understand that if you have gut dysbiosis, let's just call it a leaky gut, and you only treat the leaky gut and you already have gum disease, that gum disease will still get into the circulatory system, creating all kinds of chronic diseases. If you have gum disease and the periodontist treats it, but he knows nothing about the gut, and you have a leaky gut, you'll be able to get maybe a decent result in your mouth short term, but you'll still have problems as time goes by because the leaky gut is still causing systemic inflammation. The actual treatment that is required is to treat the leaky gut as well as the infection in the mouth concurrently. Mm-hmm. And then you'll get a permanent type of result. And then lifestyle changes as well as a diet change will help preserve your overall wellness and a robust immune system.
Would you say that your dental health is a reflection of your overall metabolic health? In other words, can someone be
Absolutely. I mean, the best person to evaluate a mouth is a biologically oriented dentist. Because they're looking at the mouth all the time. Many dentists see their patients twice a year for normal cleanings maybe and exams. So they have plenty of time. Even if the dentist doesn't have enough time, the hygienist that may be cleaning that person's mouth, whatever frequency that is, they're still looking in the mouth and working in the mouth for a long time, a half hour to an hour. They really can see quite a bit. If they're educated properly, they can see the signs of inflammation. And if it's not a broken filling and bad issues that I mentioned before, if they're aware, that is a telltale sign of gut dysbiosis. Mm-hmm. There was a study that was published in 2012, I can't remember the date, that showed 94% of the US population has some form of inflammation or bleeding in the gum tissue. Obviously you trim your beard, but when you're trimming your beard, you're going to look
once every 3 weeks. Yeah,
that's fine. So you're going to look in the mirror, and a woman's putting on her makeup. She's going to look in the mirror. Would you be concerned if you were doing that and all of a sudden you saw a drop of blood drip out of your ear? Of course, most likely that would shock you. But would you be? Now you would be. But on the average person, would they be concerned when they're brushing their teeth or flossing and they see a little pink on the toothbrush or the dental floss? They spit out their saliva and it has a slight pink look to it. They're not really concerned because it's generally happening to most people. And the other thing that's very interesting is when you go to the dentist and you think you have a healthy mouth and the hygienist is cleaning your teeth and you're telling or asking the hygienist, well, what do you think of my mouth? How are my gums? And she'll say, oh, they look fantastic. You just have a little bit of bleeding in this lower right molar area. A little bit of bleeding, it's like you're just a little bit pregnant. You have something going on. A little bit of bleeding is absolutely a sign of inflammation and or infection. And if you don't treat it then, you're going to have more problems. And it's not necessarily a bad tooth or a bad filling. It could be most likely gut dysbiosis and a leaky gut that you don't know. Leaky guts only generally only create manifestations like bloating and diarrhea or constipation and discomfort 20% of the time. 80% of a leaky gut gets systemic involvement without symptoms in the gut. So if you don't have gut problems that you're uncomfortable with, it doesn't mean you don't have a gut problem.
Right.
80% of the time you could. So it's very important to understand this relationship.
Thank you. Are there any like systemic blood markers like CRP that would indicate that inflammation?
Sure. Yeah, but CRP, IL-6, interleukin-6 antibody, it was a marker that shows inflammation, but it doesn't say where it's coming from.
Right.
So these inflammatory biomarkers don't say it's acute or chronic, and it doesn't say where they're coming from, but it's an alert. It's an alert. There are some other blood tests. Cyrex does have some very interesting blood tests that show the permeability, the added or the extra leakage that goes from within the gut into the blood system. That is a very, very specific type of test. It's called their Array2, which is very helpful. But I got to tell you, clinically, bleeding gums is a huge indicator of gut dysbiosis. If you don't see a problem in the mouth, like a broken filling or bad, something else that's going on, that tells me you've got an issue. And then there are other signs that people that have gut dysbiosis may have rashes, they may have allergies, they may have soreness in joints. They may have a lot of things that don't seem to be related to the gut, but are definitely related to the gut. So a clinician can look at the history and identify, yeah, you have a leaky gut, let's take care of it. And it's not difficult to take care of, but the person, the individual, the patient must be proactive to make changes. They can't just take, let's say, a good spore-based probiotic, which is great to help rebuild the gut microbiome, and not do anything else with lifestyle changes or other diet changes. It's almost like your house is on fire, the fire trucks are spraying water to put the fire out, but you have a leaky gas leak in the garage, and the fire will never go out until you stop the entire spread of fire and whatever is fueling the fire. So you have to get rid of all the irritants, and then you'll get a great result. The epithelial lining of the gut is the most reparative tissue in the body. That means that it replaces its own cells very frequently. The epithelial barrier replaces its cells every 5 to 7 days. That's amazing. If you were doing nothing right today and you had a leaky gut, and tomorrow you did everything right, not just food, but all irritants that are possible to control, stopping it completely, you'll have a new gut lining in a week. That's amazing.
Wow, that's amazing.
There may be other things that are going on. If you had a leaky gut, there's antibodies floating in your blood. Some of these antibodies could take a year or two by the time they go away. So you may still have manifestation of disease, but you're not fueling the fire anymore. That's the critical element. Put the fire out, let the body start to heal, and create this robust immune system to heal it properly.
All right. So with that said, how often should you flush?
Sure.
As often as you want to floss and brush, I want to say. And should you use mouth rinses, like the ones you get at CVS or Walmart or what have you?
None of the mouth rinses are worthwhile. If you want to rinse anything, use maybe half a teaspoon of Himalayan salt in some water, and you can swish with that. That's fine. I would brush in the morning, in the evening. You don't know how healthy your dental plaque is because we're living in the environment that we live. I would brush with a soft bristle toothbrush. I love electric toothbrushes. I'm lazy. They do a good job. I use that myself. There are several ones that are out there. They all do a good job. They're soft bristles. And you'll brush at the gum line on the cheek surface and the tongue surface throughout your mouth. You can dip the brush in a little bit of Himalayan salt water. You could dip it in a little salt water and a little baking soda, not baking powder, but baking soda. is slightly abrasive. It actually neutralizes acid in the mouth, and it actually can remove some superficial decay. Superficial stain on the teeth. So that's good. There is no reason to use a toothpaste, not at all. But if you like the idea of using a toothpaste, it has to be very, very clean, very natural, without any binders in it, without any antimicrobial elements. One of the best toothpastes out there is called Revitin, Revitin. It's available on Amazon. It's available on their website, revitin.com. You can even eat it. It is healthy for the gut. So this is a nice flavored, citrus flavor, I think, toothpaste if you want. I would do that first thing in the morning, last thing at night. I would also floss. Now, flossing is really interesting. Most dentists, certainly hygienists, will suggest that you floss once, twice a day. That's okay. And then they'll tell you to take the floss and slide it down the root under the gum tissue and slide it up and down. Well, one of the problems if you take the floss and slide it under the gum tissue, most people are kind of aggressive, they literally cut a hole in the gum, and that hole never heals really well, and it actually accumulates a lot of debris. So you want to floss to remove any particles or fibers that's stuck between the contacts of the teeth, and you can floss down the side of the root slightly, but you don't want to floss under the gum tissue. Mm-hmm. That's important. And then there are little picks. One of the best companies is called TP, TEPE.com, I think it is, or TEPEUSA.com. But TPs are soft. They almost look like toothpicks, but they are soft, multi-fiber silicone brushes that you use at the gum line where the teeth meet the gum between the teeth, and you just move it back and forth inside and outside. And those little silicone filaments literally remove excess unhealthy dental plaque. It doesn't scrub the entire dental plaque off, and it is the best way to clean in between the teeth. So now you've brushed the surfaces of the teeth on the cheek and tongue side. You've cleaned in between the teeth with the floss and these little TP brushes at the gum line where the tooth meets the gum between the teeth. And then you take and you clean your tongue, because there are a lot of unhealthy bacteria that accumulate with a lot of dead cells of bacteria, as well as broken down food particles on the top of the tongue. 80% to 90% of bad mouth odor comes from the surface of the tongue. To do that properly, you can get a tongue scraper, but all you need to do is take maybe a teaspoon or a tablespoon, invert it, put it on the back of your tongue all the way back just before you want to gag, and pull the spoon forward, rubbing the gum several times a day. Several times, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. And you'll see this little whitish film that accumulates in the bowl of the spoon. That's the dead bacteria, overgrown bad bacteria, and decaying food particles. If you really want to get gross, take that little liquid, put it on your hand and let it dry, and take a whiff. And that's what your bad breath smells like. That's kind of gross. But that's the way to clean your mouth. A toothbrush, basically an electric toothbrush, with or without toothpaste. But if you want to use toothpaste, I recommend Revitin. If you want to just without toothpaste, dip the brush in maybe a little Himalayan salt water, or dip it then in a little bit of baking soda. Use the floss to remove fibers that are stuck between the teeth, food fibers, that kind of stuff. Use a little cleaning device called a TP, interproximal brush. I can't remember the name exactly. Smart TP something. Anyhow, so the little silicone brush to clean between the teeth, and then clean your tongue with a inverted spoon. You're going to do quite a good job in taking care of any bad etiology that could cause gum disease or tooth decay.
Okay. So how bad is if one forgets to brush their teeth?
Not bad at all. If you have a healthy diet and you're doing everything that we've talked about, you have a healthy gut and a healthy diet, you could go for a long time. There are studies, human double-blind studies, that have used a control group and an experimental group, where the control group had a bad diet and the experimental group had a good diet, and both of them did not brush or floss. The bad diet over 30 days, okay? Not brushing and flossing for 30 days. The bad diet group continued to have more inflammation, more gum infection. And the good group, the one that had a healthier diet that still did not brush, did not have increased inflammation and did not have other periodontal biomarkers of disease. So, and again, if you look at some ancestral skulls, they didn't have gum disease for the most part. They didn't have toothbrushes. They didn't have a dental cave to go to put fluoride on. And then if you look at the primal societies today that are basically still primal, a lot of them are still, they're starting to become westernized, but they're still primal. They don't have active gum disease or chronic disease, and they're not using a toothbrush. Now,
Right.
when you talk about fluoride is just a barrier. It's an artificial covering. It can help prevent, when it's applied locally, harden the root and maybe prevent some tooth decay. But the way to prevent tooth decay is to eat a healthier diet, get rid of the added sugars, and do the things I've just mentioned. You know, if you had a pole, a metal steel pole, and you painted it with Rust-Oleum, you still get rust under the Rust-Oleum when it starts to chip away. And so the fluoride is an artificial barrier. We were never designed to have fluoride placed in our mouth. That's for sure. We do not have a fluoride deficiency. That's for sure.
Okay. Or in our tap water.
Or even worse in the tap water, because it really does not do very much except expose your body to this neurotoxin. And some people accumulate it more than others, and there are issues with fluoridated water, of course. I don't recommend that at all.
Yeah, we filter our drinking water too. All right, so we covered a lot of information. I've actually, when you said, or the reason why I ask you about, brushing and if it's a problem if you forget, because I remember in the past when my diet was, more along the lines of the standard American diet, I would wake up in the morning and I would have bad breath. And so I needed to brush my teeth, trying to get rid of that odor or that taste. But ever since I changed my diet, I wake up in the morning and I don't smell, I don't feel anything. It feels perfectly normal, as if I had just brushed my teeth. And so I talked to someone at the animal-based gathering in Costa Rica last year. And, we both talked about, the fact that there is no bad breath in the morning is like, that sometimes causes you to forget to brush your teeth if you're like in a hurry or whatever, because you don't feel like you have to. And that happened to me a couple of times. I mean, I typically brush my teeth in the morning as well as then at night, obviously, but sometimes, I don't remember because I don't feel like I have to. And
you're absolutely correct. And the science proves that if you look at, like I said, our evolutionary experience, as well as existing primal societies today, look at animals, for example. Do dogs brush their teeth? Do cats brush their teeth? Now, domesticated animals have severe gum disease and tooth decay and all kinds of gut issues. But look at the food that's in pet food, the elements in pet food. Cats are obligate carnivores. If you look at the best cat food out there, not raw now, but the best commercial cat food, several of the first ingredients are grains and all kinds of other junk. So they're getting gum disease and tooth decay and all kinds of chronic diseases. But if you look at the wild animal kingdom, not in zoos now, but in the wild, they have, of course, they will have some problems. But for the far majority, they're not having tooth decay and gum disease. I mean, if those animals were to get so infected in their mouth because they didn't brush or floss, obviously they don't, their species would have died off, because if they can't eat the food that they need to eat, they'll never get the nutrition, and evolutionary selection would have killed that species off millennia ago. So it's not a critical element if you're a healthy person. Now, look, I brush and floss and clean my tongue every day, and I know I have a healthy mouth. So it's a good habit to get into. And if you're brushing and doing things correctly, you're not going to remove all the dental plaque, only the superficial. The healthy dental plaque actually is called the dental pellicle, and its protective barrier is still there. If I were to use antimicrobial mouthwashes and toothpaste that have xylitol that prevents dental plaque from forming properly, or other binders that like activated charcoal and bentonite clay that bind the minerals that actually the body needs in the mouth, that is not a good idea on a daily basis. If you have an infection and you need to do something therapeutically for a week to 10 days, of course, that's fine. But if you're doing it daily, it's very damaging to the oral microbiome in the mouth, and then it affects the rest of the system.
Gotcha. All right. Now tell us, if someone is listening to this, okay, I want to do something. Where can they find more information? How can they find you and the resources that you have, and on your webpage, to get on a better path and potentially consult with you?
Sure. So my website is drdannenberg.com. It's spelled DRDANENBERG.com. There's so much information that's downloadable, lots and lots of blogs. I offer a variety of PDFs, like how to clean your mouth, how to support your robust immune system. Even I outline my 10 unconventional cancer protocols in detail with links to everything I do. It's right on my website. I do offer coaching. I offer coaching to talk about the gut and the oral health and so on and so forth. Hour and a half kind of Zoom type consults all over the world. But I also do a 12-week balanced metabolic coaching program where I help you reach the goals that you have by helping you with the gut, the oral environment, your lifestyle, and certainly diet changes. And I am, as you know, animal-based. Now, I'm not 100% carnivore, except for patients that are severely chronically diseased or cancer patients. So we do 100% carnivore or 100% animal-based diet to really clean up the body for that. But basically, my concept is in a little mini ebook that you can get on Amazon called The Better Belly Blueprint. And it's basically 70% animal-based, nose to tail, like a carnivore, but also some fruits, a few vegetables, no nuts and seeds, but those are the ones that have very low anti-nutrients, not much or any of phytates, oxalates, or lectins, which are very damaging to the gut and do quite a bit of damage through creating a leaky gut. So that would be 70% animal-based, 30% plant-based, or different, higher animal-based and lower plant-based. But
gotcha.
No less than 70% animals and no more than 30% plants.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you very much. It was a lot of information. I'm going to try to get a transcript done of this and put all the links that you mentioned in, I guess, what will end up being like the description on the YouTube video. I'm going to have it edited up and everything, and then I'll publish it and send out a newsletter and stuff so other people can see it as well. And
I'd love it.
Yeah.
You let me know the link, and I'll send it to all my subscribers too.
Sounds good.
Thank you. This has
Much
been a pleasure.
Appreciate your time. Yeah, it's a lot of good information. I really appreciate it. And I'll keep you posted.
Thanks, Michael.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, I hope you liked this interview. It was fascinating. I learned a ton of new information. I definitely will apply some of that to my own dental health. I don't worry as much anymore if I once forget to brush my teeth. It's all about your lifestyle, your diet that keeps your teeth healthy, and not so much the frequent brushing and flossing and all of those things that we've been taught are absolutely necessary to keep our teeth healthy. I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, let me know in the comments what I could have done better. Until next time.